Let's take another look at ingest. Specifically today, let's look into steps and how they work within ingest. So if you saw the last video, you saw ingest and how it is set up to be kind of a job runner queuing. You can use it within Next.js. It also has guides on how to use it in other environments, but it works really well in serverless environments, and I'll show you how that works via these step functions that it has. So what is ingest and specifically durable execution? So they have a really good explanation guide on what durable execution gives you. Some of the key benefits are state persistence. And so all the state things that are happening along the function while it's running get stored, in this case, in ingest. And then it's also fault tolerant. So if parts of the flow, parts of the function fail, what it can do is it can go right back up to that point and try that one spot again. And it may have failed because of some timeout that was due to some service that you're using. So if it retries it and that service is back up and running, it will continue running where it was at without rerunning everything before it. So Ingest breaks up functions via what they're calling steps. It uses steps to define kind of a unit of work. And one really key thing to see in how steps function are this block right here. Every step within your ingest function is executed as a separate request. So what that means in a serverless environment, like running Next.js on Vercel, is it will make a request to your infrastructure, run up to a point in code, run a step. When it finishes that step, it will send back to ingest, and ingest will update its data so it knows where it got to in a certain function, and then it will fire off another request back to your serverless infrastructure. So this is a good way to run these types of requests on serverless infrastructure so that you're not waiting for a long time for a bunch of different things to run. It also gives ingest the ability to run sleep functions, or wait until this date time, wait until a user fires off this action. So it gives you a lot of control in how it handles running the different parts of an ingest function. So here's an example from their website. This will import contacts. So here they've got 3 steps that run. So first they're going to parse the CSV. So you get the data, you get the rows, and then if you can imagine, it will go out, make a request here. Once it gets this data, it'll call back, kind of store this rows data within ingest, and then when it makes the next request, it's got that data, and it doesn't have to run this parse CSV again, because that may be some kind of intensive request. It may call out to another service. It will save the data that it already had, continue on to the next step, run this, do the same thing, go back to ingest, come back to your infrastructure, run your code, and then the third time it runs, it'll say, okay, I've already got this data. I don't have this, so let's go ahead and run this, and then it will finish. And so we can look at what an example of that looks like here. So this was created all with v0. What it's going to do is run function is going to fire off this ingest function here. And each of these are simulating steps that get run. So what we do is we're running, as you can see, as it's going along, it's already gotten the data from these steps. So it's going through, it's generating the invoice in this case, and then it's going to finish, go back to the beginning, step, and then get to here, and then it finishes. And then the other benefit of this is within the ingest dashboard, you get the data that goes along with each of these steps. So you can see, hey, I fetched the user data. Let's make sure that gave me the right data. I processed the payment. Okay, what was the Stripe ID on that payment? You can see some of that in here as you build out your steps. So I'll restart it and we can run it again. As you can see, each of these steps take a different amount of time. but once it finishes executing, once the function runs and gets to that spot, it doesn't need to rerun that code because it already has the result. So this has a lot of benefits to running your code in a what they're calling a durable way. So they can run it, especially on serverless infrastructure, and you've got the benefits of not having to restart, not having to store all of this data directly in your database. You can kind of handle these workflows all via ingest. I'll do a quick recap from the last video of the overview of how ingest works. So let's say you fire off an ingest event somewhere from your web application, or a webhook comes in. What we do is we go over and we talk to the ingest service, and it manages these items for you. So queuing logic, things like concurrency and throttling, and then it will fire off a request to your infrastructure, and it will start your ingest function. Every time it finishes a step, goes back through here, says, okay, I got that data, let's go until the next step, and then it runs what it needs to. So this is a really good way to handle workflows within your application, especially when things need to wait a long time or need to, wait for another service to get updated. You can pair ingest functions together really well, as shown in this example here. This simple application, we can fire off a broadcast. I'm going to say, hi everyone, I'm going to fire off a broadcast. It's going to kick off, and we're going to go out to ingest and start running these functions. So it's going to pick it up on the next time it runs this cron job, or we could just fire off this event at any point. The ingest console gives you a lot of control over how these get run. So what we're looking at here is this cron job ran, recognized it had a broadcast that it needed to send out. So this broadcast is sending, and it has a bunch of concurrency controls defined to say only send 2 messages at a time, and it's going to go through, send the 2 at a time that it wants, and then continue on to the next grouping that it needs to. And then they're all complete, and then that original send broadcast is complete. And if we want to look at the different steps that were run in here, we can see there were, looks like 7 different steps. Get the broadcast, mark it as sending, get the users, send the messages, and these fire off to another ingest function. And then we can say, okay, send this last message. And then at this point, final message sent. We're waiting for that final callback that says, hey, the last message was sent. So this step is technically still running. So it's waiting for that final message to be sent. None of our code is actually running at this point. Ingest has all this data stored. So when this last message gets sent, it fires off a request that says, hey, I finished my last, I finished the messages. So let's call back and say, okay, we're all done. And then that's when this last one can say, okay, let's mark this broadcast as sent. So that's a quick overview of how step functions work within Ingest. They have some really great documentation and a lot of good examples on how steps work. Check it out, and thanks for watching the video.